Alright everyone, so last night's episode of This Is Us is very emotional. You don't want to miss this. Alright everyone, so you guys know the drill. Go ahead and give this video a thumbs up. Do not forget to subscribe and hit the little bell so you guys can get some notifications on when my next video drops. Kevin is still on pills and his alcohol problem is getting out of control. He has this gig that he has to go to where he's going to go back to his old high school to get honored, which he totally forgot. He ends up getting a phone call from this girl from the school to remind him, and he's just a mess. We see that in his little hotel room that he has. It's dirty. The lady has to come in and remind him what day it is. He doesn't look good at all. He's in an Uber, and as Kevin is on his way to his old high school, he asks the driver to make a quick detour to where his old house is, and we see that this house is just reconstructed again. It's no longer the burned down house because, again, keep in mind, years have passed, life goes on, the house is reconstructed, a new man is living in it, and it's funny because for a quick millisecond we see that the house's address is 1646 when actuality it should be 1920, and as the episode is continuing it switches back to 1920. So I thought it was pretty funny because even Hollywood makes mistakes, nobody's perfect. But as he's standing out there, he has a flashback of his old house that's totally burned down, and it's just, for me, as I was just watching this, I was just thinking there has to be a lot of feelings that get tied to this house because, first of all, that's the house that he grew up in. It burned down, there's so many memories, but not only that, but it's like, you know that your father was tied into this whole house, and we end up seeing that this whole episode has a lot to do with his father, so that's really interesting. For my conspiracy theory people out there, I'm a big fan of conspiracy theories, and I have this little theory that's tied into this whole episode. If you guys notice, there is a flashback of them all at their house. So everybody's at home and there is clearly some technical electrical problems or something like that. The fuse box went out, and so there's no power in the house, and a lot of times the power and electricity has things to do with houses catching on fire. So for me, watching that, I can only assume that we all know, first of all, that their house burns down. So the Pearson house burns down. Does it have anything to do with the faulty wiring of the house? Because we see that Jack is fixing the wiring, and this looks like it happens a lot. So could that have something to do with why their house gets burned down? Or does it have to do with Kevin? Who knows? This would be a good theory logically. I would want to imagine that this would be it, but the thing about it is that we have to keep in mind also that Kate admits that she blames her father's death on herself. Like, she takes a lot of blame and guilt for her father's death. So does something have to do with the wiring of the house? Maybe the fuses and Kate? Who knows? Again, there's all these theories surfacing around that maybe Kate, she's a teenager, maybe she had like straighteners or appliances on, and this has something to do with her father's death. But who knows? Like I said, if you guys have any kind of theories or any kind of input that you guys would like to let me know, go ahead and let me know in the comment box below, and we can have a full-on discussion on what you guys think. Flashback to Kevin's past, we see that Kevin has this kind of bitterness or strife going on with his father. Kevin has a very important interview with a college. Again, we know that Kevin is a football player, and as always with football players and jocks, there's always these opportunities of scholarships and stuff. So he has a scholarship representative that's going to be coming to their house. We see that he has this very weird, nonchalant, I'm too cool, I'm a big bag of chips kind of personality. You could see in the way that he just carries himself, in the way that he was dressed. He had a crop top, which is very unfashionable for guys. But we see that he just has this weird kind of like machismo thing going on. His mom tells him, go change, you look sloppy. This is something that's just, you're supposed to be well dressed for this. It's a very important interview, and we get to see that there's something going on between Jack and Kevin as Kevin is getting ready for this interview person to come over to the house. He tells his mom if there's any way that they can move Jack's AA papers off of the table. So that already is something that you can tell he's not very happy about, or he has this kind of embarrassment towards. When the interviewer does come to the house, he's very rude. He's just not engaging with the questions. He thinks he's all that. And when the interviewer finally leaves, Jack is very upset. He says that he's never been embarrassed like he was today because of Kevin's behavior. This, of course, is not something that Kevin wants to hear. So they end up getting into a very bad argument. Kevin tells his father, oh, and I've never been embarrassed either. Like, this is coming from you. And he makes snide remarks about his father and about his AA. Jack tells him, you know what, you need to write an apology letter to this man and apologize. And he's like, oh yeah, because you're just apologizing for everything now. So he makes a snide little remark about Jack's AA treatment and his 12-step program. So of course we see that there's something there. Jack tells him, is there something that we need to talk about? And Kevin, of course, does not want to confront this. So again, I don't think it takes common sense to see that there's something going on. Maybe it's the fact that his father's drinking problem is just affecting him. He is a growing teenager. Teenagers are rebellious. So maybe it's because of Jack's own personal problems. He doesn't respect his father. It's up in the air. Something that messed with me emotionally and made me feel a certain kind of way was when Kevin is at his old high school and his old coach is giving a speech. You know, just, you know, what happens when you're about to get an award. There's always some kind of words that are given. And as Kevin is standing there, his old coach is just giving some words about him. And as his coach is talking, Kevin is just seeing his dad. His dad is saying the speech. He's saying how proud he is and how strong he is. And this messes with a person. I don't know if it has anything to do with the fact that Kevin is on medication and he's drunk. Is he hallucinating? Or is it just that he can't get over his father's death? But we just see that as the coach is giving his speech, he's seeing his father doing the speech for him. And this makes him very emotional. We see that after the coach is done and he's receiving his award, there is just an applause going on in the crowd, and he tells them that he doesn't deserve that kind of love, that there's other people that were there at this ceremony that deserved more credit than he was getting. And again, I think it's more of just a self-remorse, self-pity, kind of like, I don't deserve this kind of thing. Because again, this whole episode mainly focused on his father and his relationship with his father. So we can see that there's just a lot of guilt that ties into this. And I know for me, when I feel guilty about something and you have other people that are trying to just lift you up, that's the worst thing at the moment that you can get. Flashback to Jack and Kevin. Jack goes to apologize to Kevin. He tells him that lately he's just been on a short fuse, so he's been getting mad about a lot of things and he shouldn't have gotten mad at him. And Kevin accepts this apology, but there's nothing really more to this conversation. You would have expected Kevin to just kind of open up to his father and tell him what's really been going on with him, because Jack asks, what's going on? And he's like, nothing, you know, I have a letter I have to go write. So we see that Kevin is in his room, he's writing this apology letter to the coach, and he just can't write. Is it because he wasn't really sorry? Who knows? But as he's just done with this paper, he goes into the hallway and overhears his dad on the phone. His dad is on the phone with his support. Again, when you're in these kind of situations, there's always somebody that you look towards to support. Maybe Jack is struggling with his own things as well. He's trying to be strong for his family, because we know that Jack has always been the person to say, you keep going. This is like, you don't let these kind of things knock you down, you just continue. So he overhears his father on the phone with his support, and he hangs up, and we just see Jack just on his knees praying. And this makes Kevin want to cry, because I think Kevin just finally realized, like, his father is trying so hard to be strong for him, but even his father's wavering in his own things. He has his own problems, and Kevin has his own problems. So I think for him it was a realization that, you know what, I haven't been the nicest to my father. My father's going through his own things. I might be going through my own things, but it shouldn't be the way I'm treating my dad. Through it all, pill addict and alcoholic, whatever it is that you want to call Kevin, you can say for the most part he was loyal. I mean, later on in the episode we see that's not entirely the case, but as Kevin is at this school, there is what we would want to say a host, or the school host, the one that's making sure that he's just going from location to location, making sure he's okay and accommodated, making all kinds of accommodations for him. As he is standing outside the school, he's just having this just euphoric trip of memories. He's looking at a group of friends there, and he's just having flashbacks of a cheerleader who we can all assume is Sophie. And as he's looking at this girl, it turns into the host girl, and as she makes her way to him, she asks him like, are you okay? And he's like, you know what, I'm sorry, it's just you look like somebody that I know. And she's like, well, I hope she's beautiful. And he just dismisses this comment completely. This is just not something that he wants to deal with. He continues walking. He's like, you know what, I'm gonna just take a tour around the school. As he is walking around the school, he is just reunited with an old classmate named Charlotte. And we find out that Charlotte had a big crush on him back then. She says that she was a big nerd and everybody in the school had a crush on him. And she ends up bringing up in conversation, oh, you know what, I heard that you divorced Sophie and, you know, you're basically back on the market. He's like, yeah, I did divorce Sophie, but then we got back together and then I ruined it and now we're not. So you could see that there's just this, there's still feelings attached to Sophie that Kevin has. So I mean, I feel like there would be if you're just picturing her everywhere. I would assume that there's still feelings attached. So we do see that throughout this whole thing, Charlotte is trying to make advances. They're sitting outside and she tries to touch his leg because he makes this comment about, you know what, I feel like everybody, even if I was naked, would be seeing me in my football uniform, you know, as like the star player. And she's like, well, I wouldn't, like trying to be seductive or whatever, right? And he's like, please don't do that, and gets up and walks away. And for me, when I was sitting there, I was like, okay, he's loyal. But you know, as the night progresses, events happen and we end up finding out that, you know, Kevin winds up with Charlotte and the loyalty game is just not as strong as I thought it was. Sophie, I would not take him back. For me, I was just kind of appalled by that kind of behavior because it's like, you were doing so good and then you got to go mess it up again. But clearly this is something that Kevin does all the time. Kevin is out on the field reliving his life, and as he's out here, he's just dictating all the events that have ever happened. He talks about the big game and how his father is just really proud of him, saying, that's my son. As you guys can remember, there is this episode, a few episodes back actually, where Kevin is at his house and he's watching on the big screen the just video of his father saying, that's my son at this game. So he's talking about that while he's at the field. He talks about his injury. He talks about Sophie, marrying Sophie, losing Sophie, how that should have brought him down, but it didn't. He talks about the death of his father. He talks about just so many events that were going on in his life. And this is very emotional for him because, again, we see that just, you would say basically that his leg was what ruined a lot of things, but he ends up coming to grips with himself that it's him that ends up ruining a lot of things for him, because we see this when he says, and he married such an amazing girl, which was Sophie. He's like, which was amazing, anybody would have been so happy, but then he ends up ruining it and he loses her, but then he gets her back again and he ruins it again. So we find out that he just has a lot of self-guilt because, again, this is something that I guess happens all the time. He feels like he ruins a lot of things for himself. So as he's out here on this field, he's just having just a lot of self-remorse and self-pity because of the events that have occurred in his life. As Kevin is at Charlotte's house, he just is looking for any kind of pills that he can get at this point. Keep in mind that during this episode, he finally had ran out of all of his pills. So he gets up, excuses himself to the restroom, is just scavenging around everywhere, just looking for any kind of medication at all that he can find. He ends up making excuses. He tells her like he's hungry, if there was any way that she could make something to eat for them so that she could get out of the room. And as he is just searching through her bag and stuff, he comes across a prescription pad, which he ends up stealing one sheet, fills it out, leaves, tries to go get it filled, and as he's trying to get it filled, he is messing with his neck and realizes that his necklace is gone. This, of course, is just something that brings on a sense of panic because this necklace just has a lot of meaning towards it. We see a flashback of Kevin at the hospital when he had first got his knee messed up. Jack goes into the room and tells him about the bad news about his knee. He is just distraught at this. He's like, no, there's no way, you know, I'll get back up from this. This is not gonna bring me down. And Jack's telling him, you know what, it looks pretty bad. They're saying that it looks like you'll never be able to play again. And this, of course, is just not really good news for Kevin. He doesn't want to hear this. Jack ends up taking off his necklace, which he says that he got back in Vietnam, which symbolizes purpose. And he gives this to Kevin and he tells him, you know what, this got me through a lot of hard times. This reminded me of my purpose, but when you were born, I realized that you were my purpose and you will one day find your purpose. So we see that this necklace has a lot of worth and a lot of just love of his father behind it. And for Kevin, this is something that I would want to say is his most prized possession ever, and this freaks out Kevin that he doesn't have it. He ends up going back to Charlotte's place and he's just begging her to give it back, and this is very heart-wrenching for me. I felt like I wanted to cry because he's just outside the window and not saying like, Juliet, like open up your window because I miss you, but he was like begging her to give him back his necklace because this is his father's necklace. He's like, this is the only thing I have of my dad, like I need help, like this is the only thing that's gonna help me, like I need it, because again, this is something that his father gave him and this is just like his most prized possession of his dad. Again, Kevin is the firstborn child and you don't see Kate having some kind of like memoir like this or Randall having something like this. So of course this has a lot of just emotional meaning towards it, and because he doesn't have it, this is just freaking him out. So she tells him, I don't have it and I'm not gonna give it to you, you jerk. And he's out here just like crying his eyes out. And again, like I said, it was very heartbreaking. I felt a few tears at this moment. I was trying not to cry because I was trying to be very strong, and I ended up feeling the tears coming later with what happens next. Something that you guys might have missed was while Kevin was at his high school, he receives a phone call from Toby, which he totally ignores. He was saying, Kate, you don't have to keep calling me to make sure that I'm okay, because Kate was calling him a lot earlier in the episode. So I'm assuming maybe he thought, you know what, Kate is just using Toby's number now, I don't want to talk to them. So he totally dismisses this phone call, and we see because he can't get his necklace back and he says that he needs help, he ends up going to Randall's house, and Randall tells him, I already heard the news, Kate lost the baby. And the episode comes to a close. So just some predictions. I predict that because of his little fling that he had with Charlotte, this is just gonna ruin everything. Any opportunity that he had patching things up with Sophie, you can just consider it out of the window, because again, this girl Charlotte was just saying that, you know, I had the biggest crush on you, I'm like totally like starstruck or whatever. So this, because when he had told her about his sister being pregnant, she's like, oh, can I tweet this to the world? We already know that she's kind of a gossiper, so this could totally be something that she could tweet out, you know what, I just had this thing with Kevin Pearson, and you know, that would totally just ruin it if it's just out in the internet, in the media, and Sophie stumbles upon this. I don't think Sophie would take him back. That's one thing. Another thing is, we know that Kate didn't want anybody to know about this pregnancy, and he made the biggest mistake when he let this little bit of sensitive information out to Charlotte. Again, Charlotte was like, can I tweet this to the whole world? Who knows if as a sense of retaliation she does do that. The last thing Kate wants is for people to know about her pregnancy. It's gonna totally destroy her. So that's my predictions for right now. If you guys have any predictions, go ahead and let me know in the comment box below, and we can go ahead and talk about our theories. But this is going to be the end of the video. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. Go ahead and give me a thumbs up. Do not forget to subscribe. Hit the little bell so you guys can get some future notifications on when my next video drops, and I will see you guys in the next.